How are you gonna show me a flashback with friggin' Draken and Mikey and then make me concerned about their friendship? Are you trying to break my heart? But with that said, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another one of our weekly Tokyo Revengers discussion videos. Today we're here to talk about episode 6, Regret. But before we get to the video proper, quick reminder if you haven't done so yet, to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here. Let's go ahead and set our like goal for this week's video at 100 likes. If we can hit 100 likes before the end of the day, I would be happy and I would appreciate it. So let's go ahead and try to hit that. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode. So, as I said, there is some stuff that happens this week with Draken and Mikey, and it did not disappoint. I've been sort of curious to see how these two met since we met them, right? Since we first meet Mikey and Draken, it's interesting to see their dynamic through Takemichi. As Takemichi is our ride-along character, we see the world through his eyes. And so it is sort of like baffling as to how Mikey and Draken could possibly come to blows in any kind of way. So you do believe Takemichi when he says, like, there's no way Draken and Mikey would ever fight because they're too close. And, you know, ever since we met them, there is this sort of like, how does this relationship work? Because Draken and Mikey seem like they'd be more rivals than they would be, like, close friends to the point where they're almost brothers, right? So it's this interesting sort of, like, what caused them to become that way. And it's one of the more interesting relationships in the show. I say one of because there's a lot, right? Like, Takemichi and Mikey's another one that I find really interesting, as Mikey says that Takemichi reminds him of his older brother. And Draken and Takemichi's also interesting because, you know, Michi and Draken, they seem like they wouldn't get along, but Draken has such respect for Mikey that Mikey finding Takemichi interesting sort of gives Draken pause, right? And even Draken sees Takemichi's resolve and respects it. Like, there's interesting dynamics between the whole group, right? And even Pachin and his buddy, whose name is escaping me. Even that dynamic, I think, is kind of fun. Like, there's a lot of good dynamics within the gang itself. That's not even getting into Naoto and Takemichi and everything, like, to do with Hina and all that. Like even talking, like, Akun and Takemichi, like, characters outside of the gang. Even their dynamics are interesting, and that's Wakui just being a really good mangaka. It's Wakui just telling a damn good story. But at the core of this, again, one of the more interesting ones is Draken and Mikey. And I wanted to know for the longest time what their deal was, and we finally do get to see it. And it's that Draken, like, we see it more from Draken's point of view than Mikey's. Mikey is still sort of a mystery, which is fine. Again, like, I'm not the type of dude who needs everything explained right away. I like a bit of mystery, right? Because, like, why did this character end up this way? Like, what's going on? Right? Like, I like to keep, like, a little bit of mystery. I don't like explaining everything. I like shows that sort of, like, allow you to make assumptions that don't, like, make or break the story. Like, the main story is explained, but there's stuff outside of the main story that doesn't really need to be explained for the sake of the plot, and it's left to your imagination. So, like, at the moment, I don't know about the future, but at the moment, I didn't need to know, like, Draken and Mikey's history, but it's nice to know, you know what I mean? So I don't mind not knowing too much about Mikey just yet, but learning about Draken was interesting. I like that we actually get to see how he was raised, you know? Draken grew up not knowing who his dad was, which is sad, and his mom left when he was, like, 2, so, and she was, shall we say, a lady of the night, and she had Draken and, you know, kept him for 2 years, but then she bolted. So Draken was assumedly left with her former employer because Draken, as it turns out, was raised in a brothel in Shibuya's red light district. Fun! Imagine that. Like, I don't understand. So, because, like, I remember when I heard that, I was like, huh? How? Like, so I guess he's just raised by that group of people? Like those people just took him in, I guess? Because it says that he literally lives in the brothel. So I assume, like, he goes to school, and then once he's done with school, he goes back and he hangs out and just does kid stuff. But there's a brothel. It's interesting. And they do treat him like, you can see they sort of treat the girls sort of treat him like a sibling, right? And like the manager's just like, wow, Draken, you're getting really big, right? He's sort of like this proud uncle type character. So it's interesting, right? And I'm one of those dudes who, like, look, if you're curious, I am asexual. I'm also a zombie, so I'm a corpse. So I thank you not to come near me. But I appreciate that the idea of I don't want to say the word S-work. I don't know if YouTube will let me say that without getting demonetized. I'm one of those dudes who thinks you should take the stigma out of it. That's people doing a job. You know what I mean? Like, that's people doing a job. They deserve your respect. And here we see that they're a respectful bunch. Maybe not Draken's mom and dad, but screw those people. You know what I mean? So I like that the show actually goes out of their way to be like, nah, the brothel's cool. Like, I mean, it is a brothel. You know, it's not exactly the best place to raise a kid. But, you know, they're not bad people. So I liked that they did that. Wakui in general is very good at sort of humanizing the, I guess, shadier elements of society, right? Like making you be like, oh, they're not that bad, right? They're just people, right? Like, and I think that they really do a good job with that in this series. But yeah, you can understand sort of how Draken ends up, you know, the way he is. He says, like, when he was growing up, he was a lot taller than other kids in his grade, which led to him, you know, kind of ruling the roost, as it were. Draken, or Ken, as he is actually referred to by everybody, which was a surprise, is, you know, just sort of this, like, tall kid who was a badass in, like, his grade school and whooped ass. And he does the thing that you never do. He gives himself a nickname. But Draken, as we know, is such a badass that, I mean, I guess that's what happens when you're voiced by Tatsuhisa Suzuki, but you just automatically get badass points. But Draken is such a badass that he can give himself his own nickname and it actually sticks, which is kind of neat. And we see, like, even back then, he's a badass little dude, right? He's a badass kid, but he's still sort of, like, excitable in the way that kids are. Like, it felt believable that it's like, I can tell this is Draken because of the way he holds himself, but it's still clearly, like, a younger version of him. So he falls into a lot of the things that kids do, which is, you know, they're dumb and excitable, all right? Like, they can't help themselves, right? Like, they want, like, especially when you're a kid like this, like, you do kind of want to scrap. I can attest that when you're a young boy, you kind of want to fight. You don't know why, but you like a fight. And you could tell, like, he's, like, excited at the idea to fight Mikey, and he's excited at the idea to, like, whoop ass, and he gets this tattoo when he's friggin', like, how old? I don't remember how old that they address that he is. He's just like, you're a youngster and you're getting a tattoo already? You are gonna grow up to be one rotten adult. And I'm like, says the guy tattooing him. But, anyway, you see Draken get the tattoo at, like, a young age. Which, like, wouldn't the tattoo, as he's getting older, wouldn't the tattoo, like, warp? Would he have to get that touched up? It's interesting. But you see, like, he's excitable and sort of prone to falling into the wrong crowd, right? Like, he falls in with this crowd who's, like, not good people. Like the exact sort of delinquents that Mikey hates, right? And that we hate, you know. Don't be these guys. Be delinquents like Mikey and Draken if you feel like you gotta be a delinquent. Don't be like these punks. But, yeah, Draken is, you know, he gets his ass kicked by these guys who fight him in a group because they're not tough enough to take him down on their own. So he sort of feels indebted to them, so they tell him to go grab Mikey because Mikey's starting to make a name for himself, so he does. And when he meets Mikey, Mikey was even more baby-faced back then than he is now. Like, Mikey is the type of dude who defines the phrase, like, don't judge a book by its cover. Because even, like, back then and even now, Mikey does not seem like that much of a powerhouse until you see him in the present with his shirt off. And the dude is ripped, right? But back then, he's just some kid, right? Like, in fact, he's he's like this little dude, right? Like, he's just this little guy. And you're like, wait, that's Mikey? And even then, I'm like, maybe old Mikey was, like, full of shit, or younger Mikey was, like, full of shit. Right, like, maybe he's just making stories up and then gets stronger, but no, even back then, he's insanely OP. when he sees the leader of the group, like the gang members who were gonna beat Mikey up in a group, he just runs up, like he just immediately he takes a few like Bruce Lee-esque like jumping warm-ups and then just charges forward and leaps in and like double kicks, like just straight up drop kicks the leader in the face, and he like busts his face up. And he says, like, so, what do a bunch of dudes who are too chicken shit to fight me one-on-one want with me, right? Like, what do you guys want? And they all just run away. And Mikey tells him, like, you're Draken, right? I know you. Like, if you're so badass, why are you hanging out with these dudes? You should hang out with me. And that's where the friendship started. This just immediately, Mikey just can tell that Draken's a good dude, and they just immediately become friends, right? And Draken is amazed by Mikey's skill, and so that's where that friendship comes from. And eventually we do learn that Draken is Mikey's heart. Without Draken, Mikey's not the dude that we know, right? Like, we know Mikey to be tough and stern, but at the same time he does have a heart, and that's because of Draken. Draken's the reason why Mikey isn't just a malicious douche, right? Like, he isn't just cruel and unnatural. Like, Draken keeps Mikey grounded. And it's kind of what concerns me in the present when they're told by Takemichi, like, hey man, stuff goes down and I can't tell you why, right? But he, like, when Draken wants to hear Michi out, Mikey is being hella stubborn and is like, absolutely not. And Draken just says, like, we should hear him out. And Mikey says, no, are you turning on Toman? And Draken's like, I never said that. And Mikey's like, well, that's what it sounds like. And then there's this sort of like this stare off, and I'm like, are we really doing this? Like, boys, you're boys. You know what I mean? My boys, you are boys. You are like, and I don't just mean like your gender. I mean like you're both dudes. Like, you're both you're your best friends. Like, what is this? What is this? Like, I understand that Toman is a big deal, and I understand that we're trying to keep the gang looking strong, and I understand that Mikey said what he said. Mikey's a man of his word. He said he said that he was gonna take down Mobius, and that's what he's gonna do. So I understand that. But you should hear Takemichi out. I do think Draken's right. So I am a little concerned, especially given the flashback. I'm like, oh boy, anime flashbacks mean one thing. Something's about to get real sad. But do I actually think they're not gonna be able to save Draken? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. Draken seems way too important. So I think, I do think Draken's going to be okay, but I am sort of concerned about the road to making sure that Draken's okay. It's still, like, even though I feel like he's going to be okay, it's interesting to me how, like, the drama is still such that I am concerned, even though I'm like, well, they wouldn't. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but, like, it feels like they could. You know, it feels like Draken could still die. That Mikey might actually make the wrong decision, right? It's interesting. But maybe Takemichi can get through to him. And speaking of Takemichi, Takemichi has a lot of interesting stuff to do this week. My boy, you know, he has like the jump into the present, but I'm going to save that for when I talk about Osanai later. Because yes, I have opinions on Osanai. But Michi, when he makes the time leap back into the past, which I will say it was nice to see Naoto, because I was a little worried we wouldn't see Naoto for a bit, and I like that character a lot. So seeing Naoto, and I mean present Naoto, not little kid Naoto. Totally, like, I know they're the same character, but, like, you know what I mean. Older Naoto is way cooler. But Michi, when he does the time leap back into the past, we see he's riding on the back of Akun's bike. And I'm not gonna lie, your boy got a little emotional. Because I was like, Akun, my boy, not my boy, right? Like, it's hard for me to see him now, because it kind of breaks my heart. But we see him, like, just sort of laughing and being with Akun and sort of taking that in and enjoying his time with him. And he makes Akun promise him that he will let him be his first customer when Akun opens his salon, right? Because he asks him what his dream is, and Akun says, like, I haven't really thought about it. I guess I'd want to be a hairdresser, right? And it's like, all right, you want to be a barber? Sick, man. Like, all right, Akun, I see you. You're definitely not that in the future. Well, you know, before what happens. That's why we gotta save Akun. We gotta make sure that man opens his damn salon. I want to see that boy happy, so I want to have that man open his salon one day, and I want Takemichi to be the first one there. But that's not the big thing that happens with Takemichi this week. The big thing that happens is that Takemichi realizes, like, okay, so the gang fight that's gonna happen between Toman and Mobius, that's not the cause of Draken's death, it's the catalyst. And it leads up to it, since Osanai tells them, like, the fight itself doesn't kill Draken. It's that it starts the domino effect that leads to Draken dying, and it was set up by him. We'll get there in a bit. But that leads to Mikey going like, okay, or not Mikey, Michi going like, okay, so this is how it goes down. So, like, we need to stop them from ever fighting in the first place. And, of course, when he finds Mikey to be like, Mikey, I gotta talk to you. Of course, Draken, Pa, and Pa's, like, right hand are all standing there. And I'm like, damn it. Maybe you should come back later, Michi. Maybe this isn't a great time. And, you know, of course, like, when Michi says, like, we shouldn't fight Mobius, Pa's like, cool, I'm gonna whoop your ass. And he does, like, Pa does kick Michi's ass, but Michi refuses to back down. Because he knows, like, no, you cannot fight Mobius. Like, you can't fight them. Right? Like, it doesn't, I can't tell you why, but you have to believe me that there's somebody pulling the strings, and they're trying to screw with Toman. If you fight Mobius, it will be the end of Toman. Like, you cannot fight them. And Pa's like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, because of course, like, even, like, when he sounds crazy already, now imagine him saying, I came from the future. Yeah, okay, right? Like if somebody told you, I came from the future, I'd be like, bullshit, right? Like, of course you're gonna say nonsense, like, okay, bud. Your first thought is gonna be like, all right, like, okay, bud, whatever you say, right? Because, of course, you're gonna have that reaction. So I understand why Michi doesn't just tell them, so he just says, like, I can't tell you how, but I know this thing. And at first, a part of me is like, is Pa? Like, yeah, is Pa in on this? But no, Pa's not in on this. Because, like, the way he reacts to Michi saying that, like, there's somebody, like, who's, like, pulling the strings, and he freaks out. I'm like, at first I was like, is Pa in on this? And I'm like, no, Pa's just pissed because, like, Michi is now saying, don't attack the guys who brutalized Pa's best friend and Pa's best friend's girlfriend. Right? So it's like, yeah, don't go after those guys who totally deserve to be gone after, right? Like, don't go after them. Of course, Pa's pissed, and I understand. Like, Pa is seeing this from this very black and white, they messed up, they gotta pay, like, place, right? Like, even the clothing worn by Pa and his buddy, who, again, I apologize, I forget his name. If I might do a quick design time, just on, like, their casual clothes, right? Pa having the black, like his black undershirt, white overshirt, and his buddy has the white and blue jacket. That, to me, symbolizes exactly where those characters are right in this moment, right? His buddy is wearing blue and white because he is innocently, which is the white, following his boy, right? He is his right hand. Blue is typically seen as sort of being this supportive color, right? This confident, maybe not confident, but this, like, supportive, secure color, right? Like, blue is sort of like the backup, right? Like, blue is always like there's a reason why most of the time, and sorry to go full Sentai on your ass, but in Super Sentai / Power Rangers, the main, like, the leader wears red, and we'll get to that in a second when we talk about Osanai, and the second in command wears blue. It's because blue is a very supportive color. Right? So the fact that he's this supportive, like, innocently supportive dude to Pa, that's his buddy. And then Pa is wearing the black and white outfit because he is seeing this in black and white. He sees they messed up, we gotta hurt them. Like, that's where Pa is at right now. Like, they messed up, we gotta put it to them. Not only did they destroy my boy, they brutalized his girlfriend. And I can't stand by that, right? Like, Pa is, like, no matter how you feel about Pa, like, as angry as I was when I saw him laying hands on Michi, and I'm not gonna lie, I was pissed. But I was like, you know what, man? I get it. I get where he's coming from. And I would be pissed too. I'd want revenge too. I understand. But from Michi's point of view, if this happens, that's the end of Toman. That's the end of everything. Then Akun dies, Draken dies, and Hina dies. And he can't lose them, especially after just becoming friends with Mikey and Draken. He can't give up on them. And I almost wonder if Mikey and Michi could just have a one-on-one. If the two could just talk one-on-one, maybe like Mikey might actually believe Takemichi. Like, Mikey is weird enough where I'm like, he might believe him if he tells him. And there's things that Mikey says sometimes that makes me go like, does he know? Right? Like, can he do this too? Because like he says like, once I've made my mind up about this, I can't back down. And I'm like, about this moment? Like, you've done this before? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, wait, do you mean like this moment in time? Why'd you say it like that? Right? Like, there's just some things that he says, man. Like, just some stuff that are like, are you really a middle schooler? Stuff like that. Like, there's these little lines that Mikey says that makes me go like, do you know something that you're not sharing with the class? But yeah, Michi, I was proud of Michi this week. I'm really proud of Michi this week. I think the way he held his ground was sick. But I now want to talk about Osanai. Oh my Osanai. I'm not gonna lie. As much as I wanted to kick his ass when we see him in the past, in the present, I really felt bad for him. I kind of hope he gets out of this. Like, and I hope things go better for him. I do. Like, I feel like he got used. And I think I know who it was. I think we all know who it was. But, like, when we see him in the present, he's, like, panicked beyond belief at the very mention of the name Toman in the present, not in the past. In the past, he's like, I don't give a shit. But in the present, he's terrified of them. And he seems insanely jumpy and super worn down by time, right? Like, the blonde hair is gone. He has the black hair. His eyes are tired, right? He still has the scar, but he's just, you could tell he's a different dude, right? Like, life wasn't kind to Osanai. He's very worn down, you know? He's working construction, which is a tough job, but maybe that's what he wanted to do. But what we do know is that he has a boss who kind of rides him, right? Like a boss who sort of gives him shit, and he's just worn down. Just shit didn't go right for Osanai. And when asked about what goes on with Draken, again, like, he's very jumpy and defensive, right? He doesn't really want to talk about it, but he is the reason why they find out that the fight with Mobius is just the start, right? So it is the tipping point. So if they can stop it, then great. They stop Draken from dying, but it is the tipping point. It's not the actual cause. And he says that he set them up. That he was the puppet master, right? And they're like, who is he? And he doesn't say. But as he's leaving, he does say, if Draken had never died, I ... And that's all he says. And he just kind of keeps walking. And it's like, okay, so if Draken never died, what? Like, I wouldn't have turned out this way. I would have followed Mikey. Like, what? I'm very curious as to what Osanai was trying to say there before he just thought better of it. It's interesting. I think he's a very interesting character in the present. But in the past, oh boy, his design is exactly what you'd imagine. He's got, but don't worry, it's kind of cool. The way I worded that, I'm like, oh, that could have been worded better. It's what you'd imagine for this series. Like, very typical Yankee tough, right? Like, he's got the blonde pompadour. He's got this forehead scar. He's got a cigarette, right? Like, a lit cigarette in his mouth while he's talking because he's a badass, right? Like, Osanai is typical I am badass Yankee tough, right? Like, that's who Osanai is. He's got the blonde pompadour, which just screams Yankee, right? Like, that's exactly what a Yankee type would have. The forehead scar definitely shows that he's been in some fights. He's had some brawls, maybe gotten into something with a knife, maybe a broken bottle of some kind, something sharp. He's been in a fight to some degree where something sharp went past his face. And he smokes to show, I don't give a shit, and this is a stupid habit, but I'm going to have it anyway. You know, like, it's a dumb habit to have. Kids don't smoke. But he, it's to show like, ooh, I'm a badass, right? But again, I think that works. I think that the fact that you see Osanai in the present first, right? And then you see him later in the past, and he's like a totally different dude. He's much more alive. He's much more like strong and tough, and he don't take no gruff, right? If I might rhyme. And it's interesting to see that parallel, right? Like these two separate versions of Osanai. Same guy, just different points in the timeline. And it's interesting to see how life just beats him down, and how much more vibrant he was back then, even if he is a bad dude. Since he does like very easily take down Pa, which has me like concerned, because Pa, as we can see, he's a tough dude, right? So the fact that he takes out Pa one punch, right? And he tells him like, okay, good to know you guys are just a bunch of dumb middle schoolers, right? And he just sort of like I'm shaking my hand. You can't see it because it's an audio show. But, like, he shakes his hand, or he doesn't even shake his hand, because I do that because I'm like, if I punch somebody that hard, my hand would hurt. But his hand doesn't even hurt. He just kind of just puts his hands back in his pockets, right? Like, Osanai seems pretty tough, right? Like, he doesn't seem like he's going to take no shit. And even the jumpsuit. The jumpsuit, I gotta say, I have to give my compliments to the chef. My God, Wakui knows how to make some solid character designs. The one thing I'll say, and I said this last week, and I do mean this, I hate uniforms in anime and character designs. I think they hurt your ability to give me cool characters. Because if they all wear the uniform, then how am I supposed to tell anything about them? Right? Like, it basically at that point all comes down to the way that they hold themselves, and I mean physically, not emotionally, but like how they depict them, like their body language and their face. Like, that's all, their face and their hair. That's all I get if they all wear the same uniform. However, the uniforms in this show are sick. So I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because they just look cool. And I'm not gonna lie, Mobius's uniform is pretty sick. At least Osanai's. I can't say the same about everybody else. Everybody else is like a basic ass uniform, but Osanai's uniform is sick. I hope Mikey gets something like this, because Osanai basically has this red and white jumpsuit, although it's mostly all red, right? Like, the white is just the kanji on it, but the rest of the jumpsuit is red, right? Red and white, as a Canadian, strong colors, may I say, strong colors. But yeah, the red is definitely meant to symbolize the sort of leader, right? I had brought up Sentai earlier, and I said that the colors for Sentai and Power Rangers, there's a reason why they wear those, right? Because that actually tells you a lot about those characters. And when it comes to the color red, right? The Red Ranger. What is the Red Ranger? I don't even have to tell you, right? The leader. They're the leader every time. Unless it's Time Force, in which case Pink is the leader because Jen is a badass. But we're not here to talk about Time Force. So in most Sentai, red is the leader, right? There's a reason for that. Red is the color of courage, right? The power of courage. It's a very strong color. It is essentially the leader of the colors, right? Like, it is the strong, fiery, passionate leader, right? And that's what you get when you put that's the emotions you get when you put your leader in red, right? Like, you get the tough, aggressive leader, right? And here you get that aggression, right? Like, in Power Rangers, you get the courageous hero, but in Revengers, you get the aggressive, intimidating leader of Mobius, right? Like, that's what you get when you put Osanai in all red. And the kanji, too. I gotta say, he is a man of class, apparently. He's a man of culture, should I say. A classy man who has the bring it on the other side. Bring it on, man of culture. That was hilarious. I was like, a man of culture, I see. Excellent. And, like, bring it on. I'm like, okay, that's pretty sick. So he's a badass, but he considers himself to be sort of a classier type of dude, right? Like, even though he's clearly an asshole and a bad person. Because, again, do not forget what they did to Pa's friend, right? I might feel a little bad for Osanai, and I did say earlier, like, I hope things turn around for him, but at the same time, it depends on if he was there during the events of what happened. I don't remember if they say specifically Osanai's the one who did the deed to the dude's girlfriend, because if it was, then fuck him, he deserves what happens. But if he wasn't, and he's just like being the leader who's suddenly dragged into this fight he didn't want to really be in, then I'd have a little bit more sympathy. If he's just like, great, my guys did something stupid, now I have to fix it, right? Like if it's something like that, I'd have a little bit more understanding for him. But I don't know, right? Like at the same time, I gotta say the outfit is pretty dope. I wish it was on. I wish Mikey had this outfit. Like this outfit is sick, right? Even the back of the outfit, right? So let's talk about that. On the back of the outfit, it just pretty much says like I believe it's Shinjuku is where they're from. Yeah, Shinjuku, I believe. And it's Shinjuku Mobius gang. That's what it says on the back. But there's a symbol on the back. That is the Aurora. I'm terrible at pronouncing this. Ouroboros, which is a thing. You've seen Ouroboros in a lot of different depictions of media. You've seen this thing, the snake eating itself, right? You've seen that everywhere. The thing is, this Ouroboros, which is a word I can't say, is in the shape of a Mobius strip. And a Mobius strip is just sort of like, you've seen it before. It's like the infinity symbol, right? It's just like this freaky looking symbol, and it is titled the Mobius strip. I don't know if that's necessarily named after Mobius, the French cartoonist, Jean Girard. That might be maybe just like, cause the way it's spelled, like the way the gang Mobius is spelled, it's spelled like Mobius, the French cartoonist. I don't know if that's a nod from Walkaway or not, but it might be. But it's also like the fact that it's the Mobius strip, and then but it's also the Ouroboros. That to me is interesting because that's the gang picked that, right? So Mobius picked that as the symbol for their gang. What does that mean for them? Like, what does that symbol mean to them? And to me, I'd assume that means that Mobius thinks that they will always be in a cycle of rebirth, that there will always be the Mobius gang. We know that that's not true. We know that they basically don't exist in the present. But to them, they think that their cause, that their gang is eternal, that they will always be there, that even when some of them grow up and leave, there will always be a Mobius gang in Shinjuku. That's an interesting idea, like the idea that that's how they view themselves, that they'll always be there. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought Osanai has a cool design and I wanted to talk about it for a little while. I probably talked about it for a lot of while, and I apologize for that, but you know what? That's where I'm going to end today's video. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to boop that up snoot, share if you care, leave a comment down below, and of course, make sure that you hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here. And of course, before we go, as always, I want to give a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. Look at these beautiful people. Look at all these beautiful names. And hey, if you'd like to join these beautiful people, there are two ways to do so. The first, for just a single $1, is by hitting that Patreon link in the description, or for a little bit more, you can hit that join button right beside the sub button. Either way, it is super appreciated. So once again, a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. And that is it for me. I definitely went long on this one. I don't know why I had so much to say, but I guess I did. But yeah, anyway, bye!